Hi, this is Luke with the Gamer, and this is a beginner's guide to Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, you play as a protagonist known as the Fate Maker. Inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, this isn't your average Borderlands game and instead takes on a fantastical theme, with game cuts between scenes in characters and scenes with the players at the table. And while this is very similar in tone and nature to Borderlands, it still comes with a few of its own unique quirks. So pay attention as I give you some advice to get you started in the world of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. In Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, when you're creating your character, there are several voice archetypes that you can choose from, like clever or gallant. What you might not realise though is that these voices are actually tied to their personalities. This isn't like games such as Dragon Age Inquisition where regardless of what option you choose, your character always says the same lines. Your character is fully voiced when talking to NPCs, and what they say is completely determined by the voice you chose for them during the character creation.
Alright, one last thing. Bunkers and Badasses is a role-playing game, baby. That means you do not break character voice. Kapiski? Break me off a piece of that.
I'm looking to find some coin. And if I happen to save the world while I'm at it, so be it.
Being a Borderlands spin-off, it wouldn't surprise you to say that Wonderlands is a lot like Borderlands in many ways. Many of the mechanics, playstyles and weapon types carry straight over from the Borderlands series. So as a result, if you are familiar with Borderlands, then you will have a bit of an advantage. However, the game doesn't rely on or assume that you have knowledge of the Borderlands series. The tutorials are still pretty comprehensive and explain essential information, and there are a few things you'll learn on the fly from experience, but it's more fun than reading a block of text anyway. Like many other games, Wonderlands features a photo mode. On a keyboard, just press P, or you can select it from the start menu, but the game doesn't really tell you about this. Photo mode is a great addition to any game nowadays as it allows the most creative of players to produce fantastic screenshots of the game. Sadly, the photo mode is lacking in features though. You can't change your character's pose or the poses of characters around you, and it's pretty hard to get a natural looking photo because of this. Regardless, it's great for taking shots of the landscapes or some of the stills of your characters mid-combat. Wonderlands doesn't always feel like it wants you to play as a ranged Fate Maker, even though some of the classes are designed to be played that way. It works when you have teammates with you, but not as well when you're in solo play. When you're in combat, opponents will come running straight at you, often from behind or out of nowhere. And in scenes where enemies get spawned in by the Dark Lord's magic, you probably don't get a chance to see them before you initiate the fight. And boss fight arenas are generally very small, even if the boss does use ranged attacks, which limits how far you can get from your opponent. To alleviate some of that tension, choosing a class with a companion is a good idea, such as Clawbringer, Spore Warden or Graveborn. When you manage to kill an enemy, especially a strong one, their body explodes into a pile of precious loot for you to pick up. And obviously your eyes are on that prize, and you're looking for the colours that mean something rare dropped. You're eyeing up the stats and comparing them with your own, running around to pick up the gold that flew a little further away. But don't get carried away. There are probably more enemies to kill. The loot doesn't despawn or anything, and it will be there, waiting for you for eternity. If you rush to grab loot, then you're likely to get attacked again. You'll probably just shove it into your inventory instead of checking the price and comparing the stats to what you've got equipped. This means your inventory can get clogged up with useless junk, and you'll have to spend a while dropping it or marking it. So just have a little patience, because that loot isn't going anywhere. So kill everything first, and then you can start looking at the loot. It's always a good idea to keep a weapon equipped that's easy to use and reliable. Ideally, something with a large magazine capacity and a quick reload time. These are weapons that can hold their own in pretty much any tight situation, like when you realise there are 3 mushrooms attacking you from behind while you've been sniping skeletons. But it's especially useful for death saves. There's a mechanic in these games where instead of dying right away when you lose all your health, you'll get thrown to the ground and fight for your life. And if you kill someone, you can get revived instead of dying. So when you're on the ground fighting to your last breath, you're really going to wish you had an SMG or something easier than that shotgun that takes forever to reload. Tiny Tina is one excellent dungeon master, and it's pretty easy to just be carried along by the main plot and forget to get sidetracked. Of course it depends on what kind of player you are, but we recommend that you keep an eye out and try to do side quests where possible. Or before you know it, you'll be fighting a boss several levels above you and wondering why it keeps killing you easily. There's one where you help a lesbian farmer win someone's love, or free a bunch of goblins from their oppression and help them rise up and seize the means of production. You're really doing yourself a disservice if you don't play them. If you're a player that likes to keep their distance from enemies, then this is probably a natural instinct to you. If you're not though, I highly recommend you always look for the high ground in any fight. There are several advantages in and out of combat though. Being able to spot various chests around the map, keeping an eye on enemies, or finding collectibles such as lucky dice, or only having to deal with a couple of opponents at one time. In some maps it's especially easy to find a high spot like Wheat Wild Dankness, which is especially twisty and vertical. In others like the Snoring Valley it's not so convenient, so just try to keep it in mind as you continue your quest. We definitely recommend that you try to focus on 1, 2 or 3 gun types. Admittedly that can be difficult because the loot in this game is completely random, and a gun that you don't usually equip might turn out to be your best option. However, we're making this recommendation because of the blacksmith. It's a place in Brighthoof that allows you to upgrade your ammo capacity among other kinds of storage. The first few upgrades for each gun type's ammo aren't terrible on your wallet, but they start to get really pricey really quickly. If you try to sink money into every kind of gun, you'll wind up with pitiful ammo capacity and not a lot of money. Spells in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands are incredibly diverse. This means that every time you equip a new one, it might have a different way of being cast. Some spells burrow underground in a line and hit multiple opponents. Some spells fly through the air and can get stuck on an obstacle depending on where you fired from. Some spells are a simple pew pew spell that you can just shoot at your opponents. It's important to know what they're capable of before you try to fight anything. It's a recipe for disaster if you just blindly equip them and walk into a fight without seeing what they do first. So always test out your new spells. So there's some advice to help you get started on your adventure in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. I hope this guide helped you out, and check out thegamer.com for more.